everybody, it's Safi and Marco dish out on the movies, except today it's going to be mostly me because I am doing something I should have done a long time ago, this year anyway. Well, this year hasn't been very long, but I am ranking the 10 top 10 TV seasons worth of shows that were on from 2010 to 2019. And truthfully, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. All the shows mean something to me. Only one is still going, and that's Better Call Saul. Because of the pandemic, its final season is set to come out maybe by the end of this year. Who knows? We'll see. So, hope you don't mind my rustling papers, but here we go. Also, I want to say, although I have loved all these shows, although the end of many of them, which I've already discussed about last season's shows, most of them don't work. So many of these, in some way, disappointed me because of their last show or last season. They just didn't come through. So number 10, this is what we're going to do from 10 to 1. Okay? So season 1 of Lucifer. Maybe that sounds strange, how the first season of any show may not be the very best, but the second season reigned supreme over the first. However, in the beginning, we're introduced to Lucifer, the devil.
So you're saying season 1 is your number 10?
Right.
Okay.
And season 2
you don't need to mention that until you get to it.
Well, then be quiet. We're introduced to Lucifer, the devil, who decides to hang out in L.A. He has a club with lots of alcohol, women of every description at his beck and call. And one day, a friend of his gets killed. And he wants to find out the culprit so he can punish whomever. That's what he likes to do. Chloe, the cop from the LAPD, puts up with him, but seems to deal with it because he has this uncanny ability to hypnotize people in a second, to say what's really on their minds. This is a great tool for solving cases. 9. Lucifer, Season 2. This is when things really get going. Lucifer's and Amenadiel, his good angel brother, their mother escapes from hell. So, for a long time, at least a quarter of the season, they look for their mother appearing in somebody who's died, their body, and then they want to take her back. Well, it's really funny, hilarious what happens, and especially with Lucifer, and Chloe says, "Why are you looking for your mother? What are you doing?" Because he doesn't tell anybody at first, because it's something very emotional, and when you see later, when he shows himself to somebody, they almost have a breakdown. So, but anyway, the mother does come. She emerges into the body of an attorney woman who's murdered. So, anyway, all during this time where they've been looking for their mother and then they find her, Lucifer enjoys helping Chloe solve cases. And so that's what he keeps doing. And then we get the character of Maze. And Maze is a demon woman who protects Lucifer. And then there's Chloe's young daughter. There's Amenadiel, who I just talked about. There's Dan, that's Chloe's ex-husband. He's a cop too. And there's Amenadiel and Lucifer's mom. And then there's...
But what did you like about the season? Because none of that
I
stuff
liked
is
it.
really important.
Well, I
at
liked
all.
it. Well, the characters make the show even better than what it is.
Oh, you could just say that, and then you wouldn't have to say all those stupid names.
Oh, I thought people would be interested.
No.
Okay, well, what makes it good are the characters and the stories, and it's unusual. And he is a really he sings, and he's very charming, and he's funny, and everybody seems to really enjoy being around him. But he also, the thing is that he wants to help people, which is not what the devil usually is thought of as a helpful person. And he never lies. He's always, if he wants to do something bad or whatever he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. So it's just an interesting take, I think, on the devil. Okay? Okay, number 8. Season 6 of Psych. Now, some of these seasons I couldn't pick because they didn't fall into the parameter of the dates.
The 2010s decade, you mean, Safi?
Right, the 2010 decade. So this was probably one of their best, although I loved the show. I thought it was funny a lot. And this had a great cast, but the best 2 members of the cast are Sean Spicer, played by James Roday, and Gus, played by Julie Hill, his best friend. They work so well together.
Sean Spicer?
Sean Spencer.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Too much of the last decade. Anyway, every episode is hilarious, and some are funnier than others, of course. But this show is so creative and funny. But the best part of it is the chemistry between these 2 characters. You can't beg, borrow, and steal the chemistry that they have. And they are just, they have done a couple of movies since this time. And despite that, they don't seem to be, because they have a limited time frame.
Very limited.
And it's not like when you do a series, it's kind of like an evolving storyline. Even though maybe some of the storylines have been solved or whatever, you still have the main characters and they're going about their daily lives. So anyway, but still, when they're together, they just are perfect. And I don't think that's happened very much in the history of TV. How they'll have 2 characters. Who, I can think of some in the past. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, but they've had a fallout. But that they just play off of each other so perfectly. So that is the best thing.
And some of the episodes from season 6 are the Shining parody episode.
And that is really good.
The vampire episode. And I think everyone's favorite episode, Last Night Gus, I believe it's called, where you got all the characters and they woke up after a hellish night where they did all this mischievous stuff and they got to figure out what they did the night before. So it's kind of like The Hangover in a way, and that's everyone's favorite episode. Everyone loves this season. So
7 now. Now this might surprise people, but not me. This is Glee, season 3. Just to be clear, I never saw season 1. However, it doesn't fit into that required parameter of time. So, but the show is goofy, funny, stories about sexuality and boyfriends and girlfriends, cliques, all relevant to today and back then. And I think the show contributed to an upgrade in people's social consciousness. There were stories about school violence, grades, future careers, car wrecks, and romance between the characters. The best part, though, was the music. Today, in 2021, most of my playlist is derived from this show. Now, though, what's different, it makes me sad to hear the songs because 3 of their cast members are now dead. One, the latest, Naya Rivera, who played Santana Lopez, drowned on an outing with her son last year. She was contentious and hard to deal with at times, but she's so talented, and so her death was a very big loss. Okay. Number 6, Hell on Wheels, Season 1.
Whoa.
I usually don't like westerns or cowboy shows, but Hell on Wheels was such a good, interesting show that provided insight into the westward expansion, meaning the movement of Americans to the west, the decimation of Native Americans, the growth of the Mormons, the Chinese, and their place in America's growth and expansion. Also, the expansion of the railroad across the country. As usual, there was a wonderful cast of players, including Anson Mount, who played Colin, the main character, and the Swede, the baddest villain on the planet. In fact, every show that this guy, the Swede, who's a 6'3" Canadian named Christopher Heyerdahl in real life, every show he's ever been on, it seems he's played some kind of villain because he is so good at it. And you know what I would like to see? Him versus Hannibal. Who would win?
Well, Safi, it's interesting because you really didn't talk about Season 1 of Hell on Wheels. I mean, do you even remember what happened in Season 1?
Well, there was a lot of violence.
Well, okay, no. But come on, I mean, the Season 1 really didn't have anything to do with, like, historical stuff for the most part.
Well, it was an introduction to it all.
For the most part, it was about Anson getting revenge on his dead family and the family's slave and his kids and his wife. And so it's basically about him accidentally stumbling upon this railroad town and trying to track down the people who killed his family.
Right.
And so that's why he's there. And then basically, in order to stay undercover, he's got to disguise himself as the new foreman. And then you got the slave, kind of. Was he considered like a slave or like a?
No, they're free.
They're free, but I mean, he really was still like a slave.
You talking about Common?
Yeah, Common.
Yeah, remember Common, the rapper?
He had this stupid storyline where it's about how he really wants to have sex with this prostitute who was taken hostage by Indians, and he's really into her, and that's the story with that. And then there is a lot of good stuff, but I'm just saying, like, it's really hard to say, like, why you even pick Season 1.
Well, I just picked Season 1 because it's really an introduction to the whole series.
Okay.
You have to start from the beginning. And yeah, they're starting it off, so they're introducing everybody. They're setting the groundwork. And yeah, he was trying to get revenge. But, I mean, just the fact, the girl, the prostitute they were talking about, she has the group of Native Americans she lived with, they tattooed her chin, which I'd never seen before in my life. And apparently there was a real woman, probably more than one, but the one that, I don't know, she did her story with the help of somebody, who this happened to with the tattooed chin, who was taken captive.
Which,
and not
that's
let go.
fine.
And that was interesting
That's
to me.
fine.
I couldn't believe it.
But it's not interesting what they did with her character. Just, she's a generic prostitute character, and
well,
then
she becomes a
there's
businesswoman.
this
They've
stupid.
talked about this.
Oh, that's
in real life.
a million years later.
Yeah.
And
Like I said, this
still,
is the groundwork.
It still had to do with prostituting. So, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that stuff. You also got like Durant being introduced and all the stuff with him, and
he's
then
a businessman who
Lily,
wanted to get the railroad
and then
going.
You got the storyline where Anson accidentally kills an innocent person, which basically kind of destroys the story of him looking for his family's killers, even though that story should have fucking continued.
Let's not say that. Okay, well, now I'm on number 5. And remember when I was talking about the Swede and Hannibal? Speaking of the devil, or the serial killer of the universe, Hannibal, played by Mads Mikkelsen, a man from Denmark. This show is...
Which season?
Oh, the first season.
Oh, of course.
This show, in its first season, was a work of art. Unfortunately, later on, the studio made Brian, full of himself, ramp up seasons of the show into one.
No, they didn't make him do that. He did that himself.
But I thought they wanted it to end sooner.
No.
Okay, well...
He wanted it to end sooner.
Like I said, Brian, full of himself, smashed or combined 3 seasons into one.
But this is for your best list. Why are you talking about the bad season?
I will. By taking an axe and chopping the show up to pieces and turning it into a stew. So then at the end of the show, it turned into a living art project, and the rest of the show turned into a farce, I thought, but it turned out really well. And it was so creative. All the kills, they showed everything was so set up, and the story of here he is. He's actually helping the cops, but he's the serial killer, which is kind of like the jokes on everybody else. He would make these elaborate meals or dinners that included pieces of people.
But what about season 1 did you like? Because, I mean, obvious...
The kills,
you like
which
the
sounds
kills.
odd.
Okay.
And the
Which kill?
Well, there was one on the beach.
Okay.
And then there was
episode 9.
One in a garden.
That was episode 2.
With mushrooms, I think.
Yeah, episode 2.
And there was one, but I don't think this was in season 1, in the tower. What was it? What do you call that?
That's season 2.
Oh, it is season 2. Well, I mentioned a few that were in season 1.
Season 1 is like a procedural type of show. And
right.
it's really a lot more of like, okay, each week they got to investigate a killer, and Will goes to Hannibal for therapy.
Will is
and to ask him for advice. And
he's
basically,
like a serial killer expert.
Basically, the running sort of thing is that he has PTSD from killing this guy in the first episode, which was a very intense situation. And there's all this discussion with the killer's daughter, whom he killed, and if what she did and how she was involved, and there's stuff with her. And it's so much going on, and so I guess like Safi just liked it because of the kills and the elaborate meals and things like that.
Well, I've never seen a serial killer or anything that had nothing resembling that. These meals, and when they worked on this and they practiced and practiced. They had somebody who makes elaborate meals, and
well, I have the cookbook.
Yeah, and they taught him. And he had some of the stuff he had to work on it over and over again to make it look like it was a piece of cake for him. And he did anything they asked, and he did an excellent job. And it was.
Did you have a favorite moment of season 1?
No, not really. I liked the whole thing. Marco's a lot better on these details because he doesn't mind doing these ranking episodes or podcasts, but this was very hard for me. And I love the shows, but I just didn't, unless there was something in particular that I've watched it like today after all these years, and it was all compartmentalized into one thing for me. That just, I thought, oh, the show was really good, but then when they got to the last episode, I was like, oh my God, what have they done? All right. Oops. That was 5, and this is 4. This is Sleepy Hollow Season 1. This was such a good show. Everything nowadays a show wants on paper, but can never achieve for real because it looks fake and might as well have the word, quote, agenda stamped all over it. But not this show. It was all natural. And British Tom Mison played Ichabod Crane, a former British soldier who turned on his team, the British, and started working with George Washington. Because he and the Headless Horseman's blood intermixed on their deathbeds in battle, their lives are forever intertwined and spared through witchcraft, only to awaken and be alive in our times. It was funny, interesting, and fun. Can you imagine someone from the 18th century trying to figure out plastic, Starbucks, cars, airplanes, and so on of today? How about TV dinners? That doesn't count the politics, especially someone fighting for our independence from the British. Anyway, there was a lot of humor, so funny, and tons of racial diversity and stories played out by a very diverse cast. Unfortunately, the creator of the show had a brain fart, and he threw it off the rails. Very unfortunate. My favorite episode from season 1 is John Doe, who is a child from the lost colony of Roanoke, who accidentally has contracted a plague, but it's not accidental because one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse chases him into the street of our time so he can spread this plague that will kill everybody. And another bonus was he spoke Middle English. So this is the language of Chaucer, if anybody knows who Chaucer is. But it's very hard to understand the English. But they do a whole bunch of the language on the show. It was very interesting. I really loved it. Next 2 are 3 and 2. And it's the same show. And that was season 2 is 3 and season 1 is 2. And that's Grimm. Because, oh my God.
But they're separate seasons, though.
Right.
They're separate things.
I just loved this show. I watched every episode. The cast fit together like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. Again, another diverse group of characters, which any show today tries to achieve, but through being false. David Giantoli, the star, is a Grimm, whose power it is to detect the Vesson people in life. Humans they're not humans, but they're people who have the ability to be human all the time and then change from human to their true monster self. And they're all different. And when they change, they can tell that he can see them and they get scared. But he's a cop. So he's not. What would happen in the Middle Ages or beyond is that he would chop off any Vesson's head he could. So they were all in terror of the Grimms, because there's more than one. And so, but he's a cop. He wants to help people, so he helps them. His best friend is even a Vesson, a Blutbot, which is kind of like a werewolf. So, my favorite episode in season 1 which I said was
Number 2.
right, is Let Down Your Hair. And it's about a little girl who is kidnapped and taken to a forest. But she is not a regular human. She's Vesson. She doesn't even know that. She's been adopted by human parents.
I thought that was the season 2 episode where
Oh, there's two. You're talking about
the werewolves.
That's one, and that's a different episode.
So it's the same story that happened in both episodes?
No, completely different. This little girl was kidnapped. She hasn't been seen in years. They thought she might be dead.
Oh.
She's taken to a forest, and so she knows this is bad. She's a little girl, but she changes into her Vesson self. She doesn't even know what that is, but she just knows that she bit the guy so badly that she broke his leg, and he leaves, and she leaves her there forever, he thinks, or for dead. Well, she's managed to survive for several years, and through a series of circumstances, the Grimm and his Blutbot friend, Monroe, find her and bring her back to her non-Vesson adoptive mother.
But you said before, and now let's just confirm, because you were supposed to do number 3 and then number 2. You're not supposed to combine anything unless you have a tie. And in Grimm season 2, you told me before that your favorite episode was the one with the werewolves, because it's the one where the black guy finds out about the guy being Grimm.
That's in season 2.
Yeah, and you said that was your favorite episode of season 2 a couple months ago. Is that true?
It's just one of my favorite. But the thing about that episode, I can't remember what it's called.
Well, do you have a favorite episode of season 2? Because you didn't...
Yeah, that was it.
Oh,
that
okay.
was it. I'm sorry, I don't have the name. And I'll get back in another video, or we can write it in, I think, later. I've seen other people do that. But the thing is, he has a partner. Remember, he's a cop. And there are other people, and even his girlfriend he lives with, nobody knows he's a Grimm except these bad people who want to get something from him. And that all plays out over the years. And so when each person finds out, it's really better, because he's had to hide everything from them, and that's hard, and they benefit from it, and it becomes a team in the end of the show, and they call them things like the Scooby Gang, but this episode is when his partner finds out that he's a Grimm. And he had been going crazy, had some experiences, so this helped him get better, and then he just wanted to know more.
It's a pretty good episode.
It's a very good episode.
It's a pretty good episode.
Okay, now this is one that Marco is probably going to pass out, so I hope he'll be okay. My number 1 show in season
is Fargo season 3.
No, is Twin Peaks season 3.
Whoa!
Why did I pick this? Because, well, Kyle MacLachlan, who is the main character, plays 3 or 4 different versions of himself, roaming around through different dimensions. And it was so good and funny and heartwarming and weird, and just had every kind of descriptive, interesting detail you could find. And I just loved it. I'd never seen Twin Peaks before. I guess I'd been pregnant or had a little kid when it came out. So I never saw these ever in the beginning when people were talking about it. So anyway, I watched them, and then I watched this, and it was just amazing. And I am so sad that he did not get an Emmy, because he deserved it. And it's kind of the thing where they won't give Emmys or they won't recognize interesting, quirky, horror, anything kind of like unusual and off the wall. I guess they did. That was the Hollywood Foreign Press recognized Borat, which I think surprised them too. But the people who do the Emmys, they never seem to award these interesting shows. Like Buffy, for example. Buffy and the Vampire Slayer. I thought they were really excellent episodes. Never recognized it.
Buffy and the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I'm sorry. But the two highly, you know how we rate movies. Not TV shows, but movies, we usually rate them with food. Well, the two foods that highly distinguish this episode from all others were coffee and cherry pie. And they had a bunch of episodes that had to do with cherry pie. And it was just great. And I'll never forget it. And so it was my favorite, the season, because it was unbelievable. So if you have a chance, you might read maybe a little bit about the background, but you don't need to know too much. And watch the season, because it's really good. Now, I do have one honorable mention. See, instead of having a heart attack, he's having a laugh attack.
You're supposed to do the honorable mentions before the top 10.
Oh, I wouldn't know that. So I've never done one of those before. Well, my honorable mention was Better Call Saul and season...
Which season? She doesn't
I don't know. Just 1, 2, and 3, I guess.
No, probably. Okay.
Maybe just 1. I don't know.
Okay.
But most anyone who watched Breaking Bad was extremely happy to see a show about Saul from Breaking Bad, because he'd been funny and interesting, and everybody really loved him. At least that's what I gathered. But this show, of course, it's been funny, disturbing, and showed us an insight into lawyering, especially these first couple seasons, and an insight into lawyering and the social dynamics of the legal profession and the offices where they have these teams of lawyers work. And there have been so many over-the-top moments. I mean, talk about creativity and just going crazy. There have been some amazing episodes with things you just wouldn't even imagine. What Jimmy, who is Saul, what he does. And they're very clever and, again, funny. However, remember that this show is connected to Breaking Bad, which is about drugs and death. So now, after all the over-the-top comedy, the dark cloud hanging overhead has started to drop down, and sticking to the series like a insect trap tape. And Gus has turned into Darth Vader. Also, Saul has a girlfriend in the show named Kim. And the show has literally become all about Kim.
Well, it's become Better Call Kim.
Whatever, which is not the greatest thing to happen. And now we're at the point, after all that good part of the seasons at the beginning, nothing good now is going to happen in this final season.
It's strange because you put them in the honorable mentions. I wonder if season 4 and 5 were good, if you have considered putting any of these seasons in the top 10.
No, there's just too many things to pick.
Because
and
now that we have the seasons 4 and 5, which are horrible, we have this sort of negative feeling attached to the show.
It's very negative.
Whereas back when it started, it was like a very positive thing, like a very exciting thing. Like, oh yay, next week I get to watch Better Call Saul again. I'm really excited. Season 1. And now it's like, ugh, sick of that show because of how they've ruined it. And they even admitted it. I mean, I think that the biggest issue is, the show, it used to be very unique and very true to the Better Call Saul story and Jimmy's character. And each season, progressively, they add more and more Breaking Bad bullshit story. And they did that on purpose, and they even say that in interviews. And I think that's why people like the newer seasons so much, is because they have so much drug stuff, Breaking Bad stuff in them. Whereas the first and second season, they're very much focused on Jimmy, which is what the show is supposed to be about. And so I think that's why Safi liked those early seasons a lot.
Well, he wasn't born or grew up with drugs. That all comes in gradually later. And it's not because he's a drug addict or likes that stuff. He really doesn't. But he's trying to survive. And he's just recognizing the fact that...
It's sad because...
It is sad.
We expected, more lawyer stuff, like in season 1. Like, oh, he did the nursing home case. What's the next big case going to be that he discovers and has to deal with? What's the next big case that he has to deal with? Oh no, instead it's going to be this stupid melodrama where it's him and Kim, and she's mad at him because he's embarrassing, and he's mad at her because she's bitching about everything he does. And so that's what the show's turned into. Instead of what it used to be about, which was him being this smart and clever lawyer, bending the rules to his benefit and therefore suffering the consequences.
Yeah, and it's just now, I mean, I don't even know if I can watch the last season.
Yeah,
because
will.
Nothing good is going to happen after everything we've seen the last season. And just think about this, people. There's no Kim in Breaking Bad. None. Not even a mention of her. And what's going to happen to her? Is she going to get killed? Is she going to walk away?
I could care less.
Well, but it's ugly and sad and dark.
It's not, though.
It is. And what's going to happen with him? Well, he's going to survive, because we see him in Breaking Bad until the end.
If you say that it's sad, then you're implying that you actually like her character and are invested in her character.
Well, I don't want her to die. That's the thing.
She's a character on TV.
Well, I don't like that. I just wish she'd leave and go away. That's all. It's because everybody else in the show, except maybe Gus and Mike and Saul, are going to be dead. That's what's going to happen. And I'm not really looking forward to seeing people get all killed off. I mean, really, you watch several seasons of a show. It's an interesting show. You see these lawyers, and it was interesting. Now, I've seen lawyers differently now with what's been going on the last 4 years, but this is really more personal with the lawyers. This isn't a general thing about the law. This is personal dynamics of an office.
That is a general problem about prequel shows, is that they got to kill off or get rid of all the characters that aren't in the established property.
Right. Like
with Bates Motel. I won't spoil anything with that because Safi's going to be watching it sometime in the future. and they kill off. It felt like they have to kill off these characters, partly because they were rushing to an end like usual, but also just because they had to, because it will interfere with the established property. So
anyway, I think we better stop the video. But
yeah,
it's still, the pattern exists no matter what I do, especially when you talk about a season. That most of the time, the last season or the last few shows of the final season, they're terrible.
And it's usually because they're rushing to an end.
And also, the evidence is clear that when you fake an agenda, people recognize that it's not genuine. People see you as disingenuous, so you're not doing anything for anybody when you make agendas that don't belong there. That has to be natural, and it is achieved. People can achieve that naturally. But this fake agenda stuff, this rushing ends of seasons, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
what should people do, Safi?
I want you all to, if you can or you want to, like, subscribe. What's your favorite show and season of the last decade, 2010 to 2019? We would love to hear what you have to say. You don't have to go into a long spiel if you don't want. Just say what the series was, or your favorite episode, or whatever you want. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.